Lights flash, sirens wail. A black man behind the wheel of a luxury car pulls over, his hands steady on the wheel. Two white police officers step out, their eyes scanning the sleek vehicle before locking onto the driver. "Nice car," one officer remarks, skepticism dripping from his voice. "Mind telling us how you can afford it?" The driver exhales slowly, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. He knew this moment would come, just not this soon. Dressed in a crisp suit, he keeps his expression calm. "I work for the city," he replies. The officers exchange glances, unconvinced. One leans in, ready to press further, but neither of them realizes who they're speaking to. What happens next will leave them stunned, because the man they just pulled over, he's not just any driver, he's their new boss. The officer narrows his eyes, still unconvinced. "For the city, huh? Doing what exactly?" His tone is laced with doubt, as if he's already decided the man in the driver's seat doesn't belong. The driver keeps his cool, but inside, a familiar frustration simmers. He's been here before, judged not by his actions, but by the color of his skin and the car he drives. He glances at the badge on the officer's chest, recognizing the department he now oversees. "I'd rather not discuss that on the side of the road," he says evenly. The second officer steps closer, resting a hand near his holster. "License and registration," he demands. The driver nods, reaching slowly for his wallet. He knows every move matters in moments like this. As he hands over his ID, the first officer's eyes scan the name, and suddenly his whole demeanor shifts. But it's too late. The first officer stares at the name on the ID, his brows knitting together. Something about it feels familiar, but he can't place it. He hands the card to his partner, who barely glances at it before running it through the system. "So, Mr. Carter," the first officer says, folding his arms, "you still haven't told us what you do for the city." His voice is calmer now, but there's still an edge to it. The driver, Mayor Carter, watches him carefully. He knows this moment will define more than just this traffic stop. It's about power, perception, and the quiet battles fought every day by men who look like him. Before he can respond, the radio crackles. The second officer stiffens as a voice comes through, low and urgent. "Unit 12, that ID belongs to." He quickly lowers the volume, but the damage is done. Mayor Carter sees the realization dawn in their eyes. Silence hangs thick between them. The first officer shifts uncomfortably, his face tightening as the weight of the situation sinks in. The second officer, still gripping the radio, keeps his eyes locked on the screen, as if hoping the name will change. But it doesn't. Mayor Carter watches them, his expression unreadable. He could say something now, let them know exactly who he is, but he waits. He wants to see their next move. The second officer clears his throat, forcing a casual tone. Just sit tight, sir. We're running a routine check." But his fingers twitch, betraying his nerves. The first officer exhales sharply, his gaze flickering between Carter and the luxury car. The confidence he had just moments ago is slipping. The radio crackles again. This time, the dispatcher's voice is clear. "Confirmed. That's Mayor Carter." The second officer's jaw tightens. The first officer swallows hard. The tension in the air is suffocating. And then Mayor Carter finally speaks. "So, are we done here?" The first officer forces a tight smile, trying to recover. "Of course, Mr. Mayor Carter, just doing our job." He hands back the ID with a stiff motion, but his eyes don't meet Carter's. The second officer stays silent, shifting on his feet. Carter takes his license, but doesn't start the car. He studies them both, waiting. Something in their body language tells him this isn't over. Then the second officer steps forward. "You mind popping the trunk for us?" His voice is steadier now, as if he's grasping for control. Carter raises an eyebrow. "You have a reason for that request?" The first officer clears his throat. "Just a routine check. Standard procedure." But there's a flicker of something else in his expression, Pride, defiance, maybe even embarrassment. Carter's jaw tightens. He could refuse. He should refuse. But he already knows what's happening here. This isn't about the car anymore. It's about power. And they're not ready to let him drive away just yet. Mayor Carter exhales slowly, his fingers tapping the steering wheel. He could argue, could remind them who he is, but he sees it in their eyes. They're desperate to regain control of the situation. If he refuses, things could escalate, and he's too familiar with how that story ends. Without a word, he unlocks the car and pops the trunk. The first officer steps forward, hesitating before lifting the lid. His partner stands beside him, hands still close to his holster. Inside, a neatly packed briefcase and a city folder sit untouched. Nothing suspicious, nothing out of place. The first officer stares for a moment, then quietly closes the trunk. Carter steps out of the car, adjusting his suit. "Find what you were looking for." His voice is calm, but there's an edge to it. The officers exchange a glance. The power dynamic has shifted completely. They know it. He knows it. Then, just as they turn to leave, a black SUV pulls up. The police chief steps out, his expression unreadable. He looks at the officers, then at Carter. "I assume there's a good reason why you stopped the mayor," he asks coldly. The silence that follows is louder than the sirens that started it all. The officers freeze, their faces draining of color. The weight of the chief's question hangs in the air. Mayor Carter crosses his arms, waiting. He could call them out, demand answers, but he doesn't have to. The silence says enough. The first officer clears his throat. "Just a routine stop, sir." His voice is quieter now, his confidence gone. The police chief narrows his eyes, then turns to Carter. "My office, first thing tomorrow." His tone is firm, but there's an unmistakable respect in his voice. Carter nods. No anger, no outburst, just quiet authority. He looks at the officers one last time before stepping back into his car. As he pulls away, he glances in the rearview mirror. They're still standing there, stiff and uneasy. They stopped him, assuming he didn't belong. But tonight, they learned the truth. And tomorrow, they answer for it.